Lordy. There are more of them than you're visible, huh? I mean, our board of directors last year was a heavily male-centric, and a lot of the important work that we've been able to do has been done by men, volunteers. I mean, I spoke about Denton, but I mean, the work we did on the CCJ, which was not...
Caribbean Court of Justice.
Right, which was not against having a local court. It was against the way it was being done, that the people were not being consulted about a change to their final court of appeal, and that the people must be consulted about something as fundamental as that. So we took a case all the way up to the Privy Council, and that was for me one of the proudest moments of my life, was sitting as a visitor in the gallery and watching Dr. Lloyd Barnett, Mr. Richard Small, Mr. David Batts, Mr. R.N.A. Henriquez, Miss Nancy Anderson was there, but watching those men, their integrity, their intellect put at the service of the people of Jamaica, all pro bono because none of them got paid. And just watching Dr. Barnett challenge this panel of learned judges and have an answer and be on his feet. And it was for me the proudest moment in my life. And never, ever let it be believed that we don't believe Jamaicans can do it. That's one conviction we have, is that Jamaicans can do it.
Yeah, and again, it has just turned out that Carolyn and I have done a lot of the public work, so we've ended up to a large extent being the face of the organization. There are other members, including men, who do speak, but it just has been the way people have perceived us. But yes, there are men on board. There are men doing the work.
And very often, when you kill a young man,
yeah,
the person that has the most indignation or the most hurt or the most need for something to happen because of it is his mother, his sister. And that a lot of that's a historic thing which there's no room for tonight. But it is a lot of it. A lot of those who come are our mothers. But we have a few very strong men as well.
Yes.
From the audience, why is this violence so institutionalized, and are there any government efforts to stop it?
Why is the violence so institutionalized?
There's a very interesting study done by the International Center for Human Rights Policy Studies. You can look it up on the web. And it looked at responses of newly emergent democracies and citizens to high crime situations. And the high crime has a long history, but it isn't helped at all by the drug use in the United States and the transshipment of cocaine and the whole 9 yards. But in every society across the world, when there's a high crime situation, the majority of people want to feel safe. The majority of people aren't involved in crime. The majority of people figure, just go and do what you need to do to those criminals. Because it isn't going to happen to me, because I'm not a criminal, and my son's not a criminal. And so people are quite willing to close their eyes to abuses as long as they get to feel safe, which is really never going to happen. Because the minute you stop speaking about the abuse of your neighbor is the minute you become vulnerable to your own abuse. But it's the way we as human beings respond. Go out and deal with them. I just need to feel safe.
And I think, I mean, in terms of dealing with the crime, both in terms of the crime that is perpetrated by the state agents and the crime that is perpetrated by the ordinary citizen, there have been efforts to deal with it. There's been change in legislation, introduction of crime bills, which we in fact think are not going to help, that they are draconian and go in the wrong direction. There has been the establishment, most recently, of an independent investigative authority to investigate crimes committed by, or allegations of crimes committed by agents of the state. Again, there are always problems to do with properly funding and resourcing these oversight bodies, because it may look great on paper, but unless there are the resources put behind it, you in fact can end up with something that is not able to function properly.
And I think also you have to be aware of the historic roots of the violence and the historic role of not only colonialism, not only slavery, but also of our own independent choices and the violence that is intrinsic in the political system in Jamaica and that has helped to perpetrate the violence. And it's an easy knee-jerk thing. We see it all the time. There's an uptick in crime. Oh, we need to get tough. We need to hang them. We need to institutionalize them. We need to incarcerate them. Actually, it doesn't work. And what actually works is things like looking at the causes, professionalizing policing, security services, improving options to incarceration and to draconian measures. But we're talking. Hopefully you'll join us in the conversation. Hopefully our leadership will get a chance to change their approach.
Another one from the audience. Are there any outside influences that could be bringing about this injustice in Jamaica?
The injustice in terms of quite frankly, we're doing it to ourselves. That's my answer. I know that there are influences that may have impacted on us in the past. I think in terms of the violence, there is definitely a correlation between the uptick in the drug trade, which really began to rise dramatically in the mid-1980s, and that you had gangs which used to be very closely affiliated with the political parties, suddenly realizing that they could use their weapons, their organization, to go into the drug trade and generate their own income, which meant that they were increasingly less and less dependent on the politicians for the money. And that has really skyrocketed. But in terms of a lot of the violence, it's internal in nature, and certainly the abuse from the state of our own citizens. I think that is on our doorstep, our own problem.
And it's a failure of leadership. When you have your Minister of Security saying that those who die in the course of the fight against crime are collateral damage, and another Minister of Security said those who challenge the police belong in the morgue, then those are the messages that the police get, and that's the action they take. Human beings are never collateral damage. And the fight against crime cannot be won on the back of corpses.
Pre-submitted question. Has there been any improvements in the respect for human rights in Jamaica over the last decade? And are Jamaicans trending on a steady decline, or are there times when we do a better job than others?
I think there have been improvements in one sense. I think that certainly when we began working, we found that the response from the broader society was less enthusiastic, less supportive. I think over time, more and more people have begun to get a better understanding of what we mean when we talk about human rights and how it impacts the society generally. We're nowhere near where we need to be. I think, however, that what we're in danger of is certainly coming, for example, out of last year with the state of emergency, in which there were really a lot of abuses of power. Over 4,000 young, men in inner city areas being taken in, processed, fingerprinted, photographed, etc. I think that what happens is, as Carolyn has said, when things become very dangerous, people feel that it's all right for those abuses to occur. And for example, this year, since that incident, there has been a sharp fall-off in the murder rate. And for a lot of people, that then becomes the justification for the atrocities that took place during the state of emergency. So that feeds into that spiral. What we noticed over many years, though, is that there is a pattern. You have the fall off because of this very strong action on the part of the security forces. But given a bit of time, it ticks back up again. So that this isn't something that can be a permanent solution. You can't take on the society in this way.